Well, folks, hello. Hello, and welcome. I'm Casey Schulberg, and I know a lot of the people in this room. And the people I do not know, I look forward to meeting. Sorry about the rain. You would think with all the environmental scientists in the room, we could have solved that, but I guess we've got to send up some more chemtrails or something. Anyway, it's really a pleasure to have everybody in the room, and we're going to celebrate the work of these remarkable students. But before we do that, I want to just introduce a couple of people. The chief called me an hour ago. He's not feeling well, and he can't come. So we're sorry. He sends his regrets. He knows how much work the students put into this. So he was really sorry to miss it. He's very glad we're filming it, so we can send him a little recap by video. We do have Mayor Crabtree here, Corey Crabtree. So really pleased to have Corey with us. We have members of the Seminole Nation General Council. So we got Lottie Cootie, we got Tommy Chupko, Willis Dethridge, Nancy Fixico is in the back. We've got Stephanie Lambert, we've got Richard Larmy, and David Narcomi. So really thank you guys for showing up and coming out for this. I hope it will be worth your while. I want to thank also a couple other Seminole members who are here. Dana Miller, who's on the City Council for Seminole, and Jake Tiger, who's a band chief. And we had Abigail Lambert signing people in at the front desk, so thank you, Abigail, for your help. And she was assisted by Ed Davis out of Pam Robinson's office. So Ed, you met Ed on the way in. He's been really helpful. I want to single out Pam Robinson. Pam was the very first person I met in Seminole. So, and through Pam, I've gotten networked out to all kinds of people and started to get a little grounding on what's going on in this fine metropolis. Speaking of this fine metropolis, Steve Saxon is here. Steve Saxon has been the city manager for 27 years and 6 months. That's a heck of a run, and he shows no sign of tiring. I think he's going to be with us a while longer, so thank you, Steve, for coming. I want to single out the members of the EESAB panel, because we have a prestigious panel here. So this is a group that has taken time out of their professional lives to come and evaluate the students' work. And I just want to reference them and thank them for being here. First, we've got Brandon Brooks. Brandon. So Brandon is the capital projects engineer for the city of Norman. Second, we have Shelley Charge. She's the water quality division director for the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. So she runs water for the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality. Big time job. We've got Lou Voidell. There's Lou. And Lou is a retired U.S. Department of Energy Environmental Restoration Division Director. We're also pleased, I think Jason hasn't rolled in yet, but Jason should be with us because we spoke this morning. He might have gotten blocked by the weather. Jason is the president of New Fire Native Design Group, and he's executive vice president of FSB Engineering. We also have Tanner Pfeiffer. Tanner's here. So Tanner is a project engineer at Jacobs, and I guess you don't even say Jacobs Engineering. It's understood, right? It's just Jacobs. Everybody knows. Yeah. So the seventh member of the panel is Shannon Phillips, who is Water Quality Program Director for the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. So Shannon can't be here tonight, but she's going to actually evaluate the groups remotely, and we'll send her the footage of the oral exam so she can evaluate the oral presentations. I want to take a moment to thank the landowners who are here. First and foremost, the Jarvis family. Where's Mary Sue Jarvis? So Mary Sue and her family, which is all up there, have been just fabulous, and all the students made count them, 6 site visits to the proposed site over the winter, and the landowners were so gracious, opening their doors, opening their wells. Aaron and Angela Ullman, they can't be here tonight either, but Aaron Ullman, because we were having trouble doing water testing on his abandoned water well, so he pulled his backhoe out, and he pulled about 120 feet of conduit out, including the submersible pump, so that we could stick our apparatus down in that well and take a water sample, which you'll see some of the results of tonight. So the landowners have been just doing yeoman service and really helpful and supportive. I don't know if there are other landowners here. I don't know if the Bennetts are here. There's Kyle and Stacy. Look at them. There's Kyle and Stacy. So they've been just fantastic. Kyle was the very first plot that we went to visit with when we did a kind of preliminary scout with the two Roberts, Bob Nairn and Bob Knox. And he took us out in his 4x4 and we looked at his beautiful, beautiful land. Thank you, Kyle and Stacy. So I like origin stories, and I want to tell you how this came into being. I lived for 10 years in Florida, and I was doing a lot of work in water quality, and I was a waterkeeper. And I got to know a very eminent scholar in the water resource universe named William J. Mitch. And we worked together because I was a waterkeeper, and he was like the dean of wetland research across America. And he heard I was going to Oklahoma. He said, "Oh, gotta look up my favorite PhD student, little Bobby Nairn." And almost going on 3 years ago, I met Bob Nairn, who is the David Robert W. Hughes Centennial Professor, the David Boren Professor, the Verson Presidential Professor at the Center for Restoration of Ecosystems and Watersheds at the School of Civil Engineering and Environmental Science. And that's not three different people, that's all just Bobby Nairn. So got to know Bob, and we started talking about this thing a couple of years ago, trying to put this idea together. And he quickly introduced me to the Ted A. Kritikos Chair and the Presidential Professor at the School of Civil Engineering and Environmental Science, Dr. Robert Knox. And Robert is hysterically funny. I promised I wouldn't chide him too much tonight, but if you can imagine if Timothy Leary and Cheech Marin had a kid, and that kid started playing golf at 5, that's what you get is Dr. Robert Knox. And Robert, oh, he's out of the room. He says he's he's there. I'm sorry, Greg just sent his regrets. He really wants to get here and meet you guys. Greg Norman, the golf course designer, is just dying to meet Bob Knox, and we haven't put it together yet, so that will come. Now it's time to. Oh, I didn't mention the two teaching assistants for the engineering team, and that's Zach Cassidy, who's there, and Mackenzie Dorman, who's here somewhere. Mackenzie? Not here. She's not here. Okay. So Mackenzie is a Crew postdoctoral scholar. So these are really highly trained individuals and students well on their way to becoming professionals in their schools of discipline. So it's time to shine a little light on these pupils in discipline. And given how the Bobs roll, Robert Knox and Robert Nairn, I call them the Bobs, they gave their teams colorful descriptors. So the first team is called Be Green, and that's Jacob McDoulet, Sadie Prigmore, Gracie Shepard, and Xavier Williams. Stand up, Be Green. There they are. That's Be Green. That's the team Be Green. The second team is called Ducks Limited, and that's Madison Dickey, Kylie Older, Deepika Sitaraman, Megan Waters, and Paige Wharton. Where are you guys? Stand up. Yeah. Okay. So that, folks, for your pleasure, is Ducks Limited. The third group is called First Resort, because we are building a resort. They call themselves the First Resort, and that is Emily Dietz, Mitchell Howe, Roberto Soto, and Rebecca Yao. So First Resort shows your stuff. Okay. And the last team, the fourth team, is called the Pollution Police. So be careful. If you're polluting, they're going to come after you. That is Anna Kaufman, Trevor McGurdy, and Sydney Norquist. Come on, Pollution Police. Let's start your stuff. So, through Bob and Robert, the Bobs, we were introduced to Dr. Sarah Little. Sarah's here. There's Sarah Little. Dr. Sarah Little. And with Afsana Sharman. Afsana's here. I know she's here. there's Afsana, who are two prominent professors in the landscape architecture department at University of Oklahoma, separate from the CEES department. So we're gonna have two parts of this evening. First part is engineering, second part is landscape architecture. So through Bob Nairn and Robert Knox, I met Sarah and Afsana, and they decided to pile in on this crazy adventure, which is the CAPSTONE project. So they've got a lot of their students here to present their wares as well. So they were a little more conventional in the naming of their groups, so they basically have groups 1 through 6. So group 1 is Elena Moore, Hannah Reimer, Jessica Steele. Give us a wave, gals, stand up. Stand up. There's group 1. Group 2 is Cooper Cavender, Lauren Kennedy. Where's Cooper and Lauren? Okay. Maybe Lauren's not here. Oh, where's Lauren? Oh, there's Lauren. So where's Cooper? There's Cooper. Okay. We didn't see it right away. Group 4 is Adrian Ochoa and Austin Vu. Where are Adrian and Austin? Okay. And group 5 is Annaleli Kistler and Jennifer Albert. There you go. And the group 6, closing out the ranks, is Alicia Millsap and Straboni Dasmin. There you go. We had a bit of a time getting here from Norman tonight. So as I said, I like origin stories, and I wanted to introduce. I was introduced to the Seminole Nation of Oklahoma by my friend Brian Zepeda, who's an elected official at the Seminole Tribe of Florida, and often a dignitary who comes to Oklahoma and knows a lot of general council members and is often at the events that the Seminole Nation holds. So I first met Brian Zepeda, and I was introduced to Brian Zepeda through the legendary chief of the former chief of the Seminole Tribe of Florida, Jim Billy. And I'm sure some of you may have heard about Jim Billy. He was a character. He's still around. He's no longer chief, and cusses a blue streak and doesn't care, and wears T-shirts to these high, globe-trotting meetings all over the world, because they're huge, powerful tribe. And the reason Jim Billy took my meeting and agreed to meet with me was because in 1956, my father and uncle produced a movie in Florida called Wind Across the Everglades. And it was a big Warner Brothers movie with Oscar winners, Chris Plummer and Burl Ives. And it was Peter Falk's very first movie. And it was set in 1906 in Florida. And it was called Wind Across the Everglades. So a film shot in Southwest Florida that's supposed to depict Miami at the turn of the last century, has a lot of Seminole characters in it. And my father and uncle insisted that all the Seminole roles in the movie be played by genuine members of the Seminole tribe. So that was very uncharacteristic in his day, when they would just dress up Charlton Heston, paint him up, and send him out as Osceola or something. So, and Corey Osceola, who was the chief of the tribe at the time, had a pretty significant role in the movie. The movie was directed by Nicholas Ray. It was, it wasn't a huge hit, but it was this big Warner Brothers movie. And so the Seminole Tribe of Florida today smiles on that movie, because not only did we insist, not me, my dad and uncle, insist on all of it being accurate and casting all Seminoles in Seminole roles, but all the hair, makeup, the Seminole lore was very authentic and very accurate to the period, which was 1906. So the Seminole Tribe of Florida still smiles on that movie, and that's how I got introduced to Jim Billy, and that's how I started with the project, and that's what ultimately brought me to Oklahoma. Because Brian introduced me to Chief Johnson. Chief Johnson called me about an hour ago. He's not feeling well. He had hoped to be here, and he's hoping that we'll film it so we can send him the footage and see what you guys have all created here. So that's how that's how we all got here tonight in this room in Seminole, and that's how we came up with the idea to do a capstone project on this resort. Without further ado, I would like to pass the baton and the microphone to my friend, Little Bobby Nairn. Yeah.
there was only one person in the world who called me Little Bobby Nair, and that was Bob Knox, until KC picked up on it. I tend to, as you can see, I'm quite petite, so most people, it fits. Thank you, KC. On behalf of the University of Oklahoma School of Civil Engineering and Environmental Science, I welcome you here tonight, and I thank you for filling the room for these students. They are going to give a presentation. We expect them to get some pretty good questions from you all. So as Casey said, my name is Bob Nair, and I'm a professor at the University of Oklahoma. And with my colleague Bob Knox, we have taught the CAPSTONE class together for many years, the Environmental Science and Environmental Engineering CAPSTONE experience. As Casey mentioned, we were lucky enough to have Zachary Cassidy help us as a graduate teaching associate this semester. CAPSTONE is supposed to be the cumulative experience of our students' undergraduate education. So it's not a traditional class. We teach it a little differently. It's very much a, a client-driven, team-oriented, real-world experience. That's what we're striving for. So we do very little teaching in the class. We facilitate the work that the students are doing. The multidisciplinary student teams that KC introduced to you are, I'll devote a full academic year to the CAPSTONE project. From initial kind of project introduction to tonight, essentially, the culmination of that experience. We identify that project usually about a year in advance. I went back and looked, and as Casey mentioned, our first contact was back in 2023, so it's been quite a journey to get here. Student teams develop project documents, they perform field data collection, they complete laboratory analyses, they interpret the data that they generated to inform design calculations and provide written and oral deliverables that went to our ESAB. We thank them again for their input in evaluating these students. In short, it's a lot of work. They do a tremendous amount of work, and I'm sure they're very anxious to share it with you. So at this time, I'd like to call selected students who will provide the presentation of their capstone experience, the 2024-2025 University of Oklahoma Environmental Science and Environmental Engineering capstone. Please, come on out, folks.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Tonight, we'll be talking about the conceptual design of water supply treatment and reuse options for a sustainable integrated resort complex. The teams that will be presenting are First Resort, Ducks Limited, Be Green, and Pollution Police. And these teams are composed of environmental engineers and environmental scientists. I'd also like to add that throughout our slides and incorporated in our logos, we decided to add traditional Seminole pattern patchwork. But before we dive in any further, we'd like to state a land acknowledgement. The land on which the development is proposed lies within the allotted treaty lands of the Seminole Nation. Today, 39 nations dwell in the state of Oklahoma because of settler and colonial policies. The University of Oklahoma recognizes the historical connection our project has with the indigenous communities. We acknowledge, honor, and respect the diverse indigenous peoples connected to this land. And we fully recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereign rights of all Oklahoma's 39 tribal nations. Now, as mentioned previously, the Maple Leaf Resort development is proposed to be here in Seminole County, Oklahoma. And they aim to be the largest renewable and sustainable resort in North America. They will lie within the Earlsboro oil field, the historic Earlsboro oil field, and within the allotted treaty lands of the Seminole Nation. And its current land use is mainly agricultural and oil production, as seen here by this map. This is the current conditions of the site. And just for reference, on this north end is I-40, and on the east end, which is on this side, is Highway 99. And in this image right here is an image provided by Maple Leaf Resorts. I'd like to mention that it is not to scale. And basically the layout is set to sit on 1,800 acres with 3 miles of frontage on I-40. And the construction of the amenities is going to be in 2 phases. Some of those amenities will include a world-class water park, casino, and a bison and nature preserve. As Dr. Nairn mentioned previously, our scope of work lasted for a year, and we broke it down into 2 semesters. For the fall of 2024, we had to do project document development, which consisted of health plans, project work plans, quality assurance project plans, and sampling and analysis plans, and topical research reports. Now, these are very common in the environmental consulting field, so this is why we did them, and they're required before stepping foot on any kind of a project on site. And the scope of work for the spring of 2025, we had to do environmental site analyses, which were composed of soil, surface water, and groundwater samples. We had to do water supply, which basically is where are we going to get this water from? And we had to do the water supply calculations for the storage and the demand for the resort, wastewater collection management and treatment and reuse, stormwater management and reuse, and recommended design cost estimates. Our objective was to apply the one water approach, which basically is the management of all water, whether from a tap, a stream, a storm, or wastewater system in an integrated, inclusive, and holistic manner to secure a sustainable future for all people and our planet. In other words, we must view any source of water equally as important as the other to optimize the water use while minimizing the amount that goes to waste. In order to do this, we must close the loop on water. By understanding that water is a finite resource, we have to design for a long-term resilience and reliability and meet the needs of the resort and the ecosystem. One way to do this is by following the circular water economy on this image on the left. So it would be by starting from the water abstraction, going to the water treatment and transport to the actual use of the water, and then we recycle it, and then we use it, then we send it to the wastewater treatment, we recycle and reuse it, and then run it back to the wastewater to then replenish our water storage for the site. In order to implement these practices and come up with a design, we need to determine the current soil water quality on and around the site. Therefore, we collected 22 soil samples, 6 groundwater samples, and 7 surface water samples. And also, we did field measurements for water, with the only key difference being for the water samples was water field measurements are the volumetric discharge rates. Now, for the lab analyses for all 3 media, we conducted over 2,700 total analyses in the lab. And on this map is a map of the soils where we collected our samples from the soil. As you can see, they're mainly within the proposed site. Our groundwater samples were collected from areas that we had access to, given permission by the private landowners. And the surface water samples, which on the inside of the proposed site, were mainly ponds. And we did 3 samples along Turkey Creek, which would be the major body that would receive water from the ponds. So this is why we sampled on this creek. And now I would like to turn it over to the teams so they can propose their findings and their proposed designs.
Hello, I'm from First Resort, and this is my team. My name is Emily, and I was in charge of technical writing and calculations. And then we've got Rebecca, and she was our team leader and our data analysis specialist and researcher. And then we have Roberto, who was our calculation and modeling support and research lead. And then Mitchell, which was our design, calculation, and modeling lead and our editor. So based on the environmental site analysis, we determined that we would use the groundwater from the Musa aquifer for our potable supply, since it will not be treated since it passed all EPA primary drinking water standards. And then the surface water and runoff will be used for irrigation of the golf course greens and any other landscaping across the resort, as well as the sports fields, and then water features and the bison refuge. Treated wastewater will be used for irrigation of the golf course roughs and fairways. So we calculated water demand. The average demand was about 1 million gallons per day. However, with peaking factors, this was about 3.6 million gallons per day. However, we plan to reuse water for the non-potable uses, and so this gets it down to about 2.9 million gallons per day, which we determined meets the Oklahoma Water Resources Board maximum yield of 2 acre-feet per acre per year. So for this demand, we determined that 5 new wells will be needed to be drilled, assuming that each well has a 750 gallon per minute capacity. So for this We will also need 6 million gallon storage, which we decided to split up into 3 2 million gallon tank towers. And then, as you can see here, that's where we propose the location be, since that has the highest elevation. And so we can utilize gravity flow throughout the distribution system. So we also calculated runoff, which we calculated for a 2-hour, 100-year storm for both phase 1 and phase 2. We estimated the flow rate to be about 380 gallons per minute for before development, and then about 470,000 gallons per minute after development. To manage this, we suggest permeable pavements, stormwater collection systems, rain gardens, and then allowing runoff into the existing ponds and a treatment wetland. So for the permeable pavements, we decided to go with permeable interlocking concrete pavement because it allows infiltration into the ground, which can replenish the groundwater. It is also stronger than average concrete, rated at 8,500 PSI, and it's also cheaper as well. So we recommend an underdrain that will lead to underground storage tanks. This will allow infiltration into the ground. As shown here, the discharge pipe will be set above the base to allow infiltration, and then it will be carried into, any excess water will be led into an underground storage tank, as shown here. And as you can see, there's no bottom on the tanks, and so this allows additional infiltration into the ground that can replenish the groundwater. So we will first need a pre-tank filter for this to clean the water. This will filter out anything greater than 400 microns, which for reference is about 1/3 of the size of a grain of sand. And then we will also need absorptive filters for additional nutrients and metals that cannot be filtered out using the pre-tank filters. And then this water will be reused for irrigation of the golf course greens and landscaping, as well as water features. We also suggest rain gardens, which can absorb 30% or more than regular lawns. They can also filter out 22 to 93% of pollutants, such as total suspended solids and total nitrogen. They typically consist of 3 layers. As shown here, there's a ponding area, a mulch layer, and then a soil mixture. And we suggest that the total area of these rain gardens be about 10% of the impervious area that drains to them. And in addition to the water quality benefits, they can also serve as an aesthetic component to the resort, such as reducing weeds and mosquitoes and encouraging beneficial wildlife. These typically cost about $5 to $40 per square foot. However, they have lower operation and maintenance costs because they only need a mulch layer each year. So then for the wastewater treatment plant, we suggest an activated sludge system with a capacity of about 3 million gallons per day, which is sized based on the max day demand, and then including a factor of safety. We also recommend having a treatment wetland to polish the wastewater and treat any excess runoff from the golf course. And then this water will be reused for the golf course roughs and fairways and the bison refuge if needed during droughts. As you can see here in this table, constructed wastewater wetlands can treat to about 44 to 80% of these common constituents found in wastewater. So in order to do this, we suggest moving the golf course to the south side of the property because the wetland should be adjacent to it in order to catch the runoff from the golf course. So as you can see here, the treated wastewater will flow into the wetland to be treated, and then it will be stored in a retention pond, which can then be used to water the golf course, and then any excess runoff will go into the wetland to be treated, so it just creates this cycle, and then any excess water that isn't used can be discharged into Turkey Creek. So for the treatment wetland, as I said before, the purpose is to polish the treated wastewater and then treat nitrogen and phosphorus from the golf course runoff. For the design, it should be a surface flow wetland with cattail, which is especially efficient at removing phosphorus and nitrogen, which are common constituents and like our target constituents to treat for. And then the hydraulic residence time should be about 14 days and it should be 50 acres. Now I'm going to pass it off to the next team.
Hello, I'm the representative from Ducks Limited. I am Megan, I'm the team leader and I worked on water storage. Madison was our record manager and science editor. Kyle is our copy editor and gray and wastewater calculator. Deepika is our sampling manager and stormwater calculator. And Paige is our data manager and she worked on water demands. So our calculated water demands were an average of 2.3 million gallons per day, which led to a required potable storage of 3.3 million gallons. We would divide this between 2 water towers, one being 2 million gallons and one being about 1.5 million gallons. We also calculated a required fire storage of 4.1 million gallons, and because water needed to put out a fire doesn't need to be to drinking standards, this can be met via water from the ponds. Also because this is not a regular water use, so it would only be used in emergency. Additionally, we calculated an average wastewater generation rate of 2 million gallons per day, and we decided that we wanted to implement a third water tower for non-potable storage on the golf course for irrigation purposes. That would be 800,000 gallons. So for our groundwater samples, we identified pretty hard water. It was between 42 and 721 milligrams per liter as calcium carbonate. And for reference, water is considered to be hard when it's over about 120 milligrams per liter as calcium carbonate. And only one of our wells had the 42 milligrams per liter number, and it was the only one that was within the soft range. And hardness is not a danger to human health, however, it does cause a few issues. So we recommend softening. One benefit is to reduce mineral buildup, such as this in this figure here, on water fixtures. Additionally, softening will increase the effectiveness of soaps. We also recommend capturing rainwater. So we will implement collection systems on rooftops. We estimated a total of 13 acres of roofing that this would come from. And we will put storage tanks on the ground outside each building. We chose to implement a total of 45 tanks, which would each be 5,000 gallons. And we will reuse this water for irrigation around each building where the water is collected. And we estimate a maximum of 11 million gallons per year of this rainwater can be collected, depending on how frequently these tanks are emptied. We also recommend reusing gray water. Gray water is the water that comes from showers, sinks, laundry, and dishwashers, as opposed to black water, which is what comes from toilets. So this water has lower treatment needs, and it can be treated by a system that is within the building being the hotels. And this water will be reused for non-potable uses, such as toilet flushing, laundry, and potentially irrigation outside of the hotels. Because this water is not up to drinking standards, it must be frequently circulated, and it can be only stored for a maximum of 1 day. Additionally, we recommend using biodegradable soaps because they are easier to treat in these systems. And we decided to size the system for a capacity of 15,000 gallons per day for the 3-star hotel and 20,000 gallons per day for the 4-star and 5-star hotels. We additionally recommend evaporation control measures, such as shading water features. This can be done by putting trees around ponds or other water features, as well as through man-made structures such as these, which could go above certain areas of the water park. This helps to prevent sunlight from contacting the water, which is what often leads to evaporation. Additionally, we recommend covering water storage, such as the rainwater collection tanks, as well as covering pools when they're not in use. We also recommend irrigating at night to additionally prevent more of that sun from reaching the water. And we recommend direct drip irrigation, such as this seen in this image, which slowly releases the water into the soil rather than occasionally putting large pools of water out. And we hope that by implementing these measures, this resort can be as water efficient as possible. And now I will turn it to the next team.
Hello, I'm from the team B Green. I'm Gracie Shepherd. I'm the team leader, oral presenter, and technical designer. My teammates are Sadie Craigmore, who's a technical writer, graphical designer, and project coordinator, Jake McDoulet, who's our data analyst, technical designer, and legal review, and Xavier Williams, who's our digital modeler, mapping specialist, and data analyst. A summary of our proposed water system is seen in this diagram. We will get our water from wells, which will then be stored in our water tower 1, as seen in the diagram. This will then be used in our potable use systems, and then it will be directed to the wastewater treatment plant. As part of our reuse system, the water that has been treated in the wastewater treatment plant will then be stored in an additional water storage system, which can then be used for fire flow and toilet flushing before being returned to the wastewater treatment plant. We will also be collecting stormwater in our wetlands and detention ponds, and treated water from the treatment plant will go towards irrigation, and then any overflow will go towards wetlands and ponds, and finally anything that cannot be used in the system will be discharged. Our irrigation and wetlands not only minimize discharge, but they also provide ecological benefits. For our water demand calculations, we used facility by facility estimates for stage 1 of the design. We obtained a flow of about 800,000 gallons per day. This was assuming that the arena, the multi-purpose arena, would be full about once per week. In this graph, we show the 3 different methods that we used. So when the arena is full, which is shown in the blue bars on the graph, we determined that it will contribute a great deal to our total water demands. And when it is empty, shown in green, as you can see, the main sources of water demand are the casinos and the staff housing areas. So our design approach was assuming that the arena will be full once per week and averaging the total population over that time period. Our calculated toilet flow was about 92,000 gallons per day, and this was assuming about 14,000 people as our mean daily traffic. The water source that we identified was the Ada Musa aquifer, which will have groundwater wells. This image shows a map from the Oklahoma Hydrologic Atlas of the aquifer, and our project site is highlighted in the green box. From our testing, we determined that all wells meet EPA primary drinking water standards and require minimal treatment, although they do not meet secondary standards, which is why some treatment is recommended. We determined through our tests that surface water is not usable for potable use. Our water storage system for stormwater, we designed based on a 2-hour, 100-year storm, which was around 830,000 gallons per minute. The mean annual rainfall in this area is about 42 inches or 3.5 feet per year, and this is over the entire 1,800-acre property area. From these calculations, we found that we will need about 217 million gallons per year of detention storage space. For our groundwater and reclaimed water, we found that we will need a 1.5 million gallon potable water tower, and we will need about 3.5 million gallons for fire flow and our other treated wastewater uses. This can be met either through multiple water towers or other storage systems. In our wastewater treatment plant, we will treat the water to a Category 2 standard. This is water that can be used, as I mentioned, for fire flow, irrigation and landscaping, and toilet flushing. In order to achieve this quality of water, we will need primary and secondary treatment, coagulation and filtration, and disinfection in our treatment plant, which will cost around $12 million. Any surplus reclaimed water that we cannot use in this system will be available for irrigation, which could also support sustainable agriculture. And if it cannot be used through irrigation or the other methods listed, we will be discharging into Turkey Creek following ODEQ permit requirements. In our stormwater wetlands, they will capture, store, and treat the stormwater runoff. The mechanisms they use to achieve this treatment are microbial activity, sedimentation, plant uptake, and all of these mechanisms will reduce total nitrogen, phosphorus, metals, and solids in the water. In our design, we recommend deep water pools to slow inflow, marsh cells for enhanced nutrient removal, and a multi-cell layout to increase treatment time. So we also analyzed whether stormwater wetlands would be an effective source of these services. We studied Freedom Park in Naples, Florida, which treats about 200 million gallons per year, and it's about 50 acres. And they found that their water had 37% less nitrogen, 81% less phosphorus, and it also provided habitat and green space. In their design, they found that with increased scale of the wetland, they had reduced cost, which we could also apply to our design by having a single larger wetland as opposed to multiple smaller ones. For our floating wetlands, they are buoyant platforms with wetland plants. They will be installed in pre-existing detention ponds that may have limited space or fluctuating levels of water. These floating wetlands have roots and biofilm that can remove nutrients, metals, and fine particles. They also increase habitat and biodiversity. They cost about $20 to $25 per square foot, and the total number of floating wetlands will depend on the number of detention ponds that are kept on the property. I will now pass it over to the next team.
Good evening. I will be presenting for the 4th Team Pollution Police. My name is Anna Kaufman. I worked as a researcher, hydrologist, data analyst, and writer. Sydney Norquist was our team leader. She worked on GIS and laboratory work. And Trevor McCurdy was a writer, data analyst, hydrologist, and field personnel for our group. For our results, we first looked at the water system. Based on the amount of people currently estimated for the property, as well as fire flow demands, we estimate that the distribution system needs to handle 9,170 gallons per minute at the highest rate. This will be coming from 8 groundwater wells. Our storage volume was calculated between phase 1 and phase 2, between 8.5 and 12.5 million gallons. This will be 4 to 6 2 million gallon elevated storage tanks. Our wastewater treatment plant, we designed for a capacity of 2,300 gallons per minute with a capital cost of $12 to $27.5 million. This is a fairly wide range, but it depends upon how automated the system is and what types of processes are used to treat the water. This water will then be discharged to Turkey Creek. Next, reviewing the runoff, we calculated for a 24-hour, 10-year storm runoff rate, initially without any of the development built, so this is what the natural property has already, as 100,000 gallons per minute. Then for the same situation, but after the resort is built using traditional engineering methods, there's a 10% increase in runoff for a 110,000 gallons per minute flow. Next, when reviewing the water reuse strategies, there's 3 options. However, for direct and indirect potable reuse, they are either not currently allowed or not currently used in Oklahoma, so we decided to follow that precedent and focus on non-potable reuse. This, for us, we focused on capturing the runoff, storm runoff, for watering the landscaping, or filtering and sanitizing the water parks water and reusing it. Next, when dealing with that runoff, we have our green infrastructure plan. This is focused around a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd priority recommendations. We unfortunately won't have time to cover all of these, but you can see any of the details in the report. Instead, we will focus on 3 designs within the 1st and 2nd priority recommendations. Our 1st priority recommendations focus on directly reducing the amount of runoff that the property creates and increasing infiltration. Our 2nd priority recommendations focus on further addressing that runoff once it has been created and providing aesthetics. And our 3rd priority recommendations focus on long-term ideas and practices that can help the resort be more water and energy efficient. For our 1st priority recommendations, we're looking first at our pavements and parking. So one idea is using multi-story parking garages. It does have an increased structural cost, but will significantly help reduce the runoff. We could also use gravel parking lots for less commonly used areas. This ensures that the property, that part of the parking garage will remain fully permeable and allow water to infiltrate. Lastly is using permeable pavements. These last longer than traditional parking lots and pavements. They do have a short-term increased maintenance by focusing on keeping those pores open to allow for infiltration, but altogether these 3 ideas can decrease the runoff by 15 to 18%. They can also help remove pollutants such as nutrients, metals, and total suspended solids, and the cost range from $1 to $14 per square foot. For example, on the higher end, $7 to $14 is permeable interlocking concrete pavement such as this. It is more aesthetically pleasing, so we do recommend it for outdoor seating areas such as the restaurants or by the pool or the condominiums. You can also use permeable asphalt or concrete, which is typically on the cheaper side, usually only a couple dollars more expensive than traditional pavements, but would be good for walking trails and other similar uses. Another of our 1st priority recommendations are rooftop gardens. These can reduce runoff by 25 to 29%. They will also help increase the biodiversity and habitat for the property. They can also reduce the air conditioning and heating costs, as well as improve air and water quality. Now, these similarly do have a higher installation cost of 50 to 100% over the traditional, but with those long-term reduced air conditioning and heating costs after a garden rooftops 40-year lifespan can be 30 to 40% cheaper than traditional roofing options. Now, for our secondary priority recommendations, we first look at the constructed wetlands. These can help with the runoff retention and then using that water to water the landscape. This can also further improve air and water quality and provide aesthetics. Now, for the placement of these, I first bring you back to, this is the graph that Roberto showed. Again, we can see as it currently stands, a lot of the impervious amenities are situated in this northeastern corner, which is fine if that stays. However, we do want to consider the hydrology of the land. Currently, if you put all of those amenities in this corner, most of it's going to be flowing northwards towards the highway. We have a concern of flooding the highway if this is how it stays. Of course, when we're doing all this construction, you can adjust the hydrology and start to direct it down south and place those wetlands in the south as well. With those constructed wetlands, we calculated the area and cost that would be needed with or without green infrastructure. So again, no green infrastructure is all traditional engineering methods. With green infrastructure are these ideas such as the permeable pavements and the rooftop gardens. So no green infrastructure would be 50 or 500 to 900 acres. With green infrastructure, you can take that in about half as much of area would be needed, about 250 or 550 acres. Of course, this is still a significant amount of land, 15 to 50% of the property. We can also further reduce these surface areas by making them, instead of just wetlands, if you make it partially a deep water pond, then you can excavate deeper, have less surface area overall. Of course, with the capital cost, it will still be, as shown, about $2 million, because even if you decide to excavate deeper, you're just pulling more soil just from lower instead of wider out. And I will now hand it back over to Roberto to finish this out.
All right, now I will basically highlight all the team's recommended designs to conclude our presentation. First Resort, they recommend installing permeable interlocking concrete pavers, stormwater storage and reuse, rain gardens, and a wetland for golf course runoff and wastewater polishing, and wastewater reuse for golf roughs and bison refuge. Ducks Limited, their recommendation is water softening, rainwater capture, gray water treatment and reuse, and evaporation control through shading and watering strategies. Be Green, stormwater storage, stormwater wetlands, floating treatment wetlands, water, treated water for irrigation and non-potable reuse, pollution police, multi-story parking garages, gravel and low use areas, permeable pavements, rooftop gardens, and constructed wetlands. And we'd like to give a special thanks to Casey Schulberg from Maple Leaf Resorts, Seminole Nation of Oklahoma, and the City of Seminole, as well as our ESAP our advisory board for being here tonight and reviewing our work, as well as meeting with us online. And thank you everyone else for being here tonight. And now we'd like to call all my classmates to join me down here so we can answer everyone's questions.
All right, I'm Jason Appleby, New Fire Data Design Group. Appreciate your presentations. I think you all did a really good job. Read all the reports, which are very good too. The main thing that jumped out to me is the difference in what each of the teams came up with from a potable water demand. And I wonder if you could all kind of speak to your process. Some of them were better at sort of outlining your assumptions and how you came to that demand than others. And so I'm curious what you all thought about the difference in your answers. What might be the reasons and who thinks they're right?
I'll start. For Be Green, we did like Gracie said before, we did a facility by facility. We went individual buildings and used the numbers that Casey gave us for like expected daily traffic and building size. And another thing that I think that we sort of estimated lower than everybody else is because we didn't really focus on phase 2 of the development. We, because it had things like the water park that was just such a major demand that we really focused on phase 1, getting all the steps of phase 1 done first. And which is why I think that we ended up with a lower estimate. I don't know that I'm ready to claim that ours is the one that's right, but we feel comfortable about it.
I can speak for my group. We did focus on a lot of the maximums and making sure that we could handle the estimated amount of people and the water use. We also made a fair amount of assumptions on some of the amenities that we found that were a little oversized. For example, the water park was originally designed for 20 acres, but when looking at similarly designed water parks that are still, very loved by the public, we found that usually 12 or 13 acres might be a little bit more reasonable, as well with wanting to follow one water approach and not overusing water. So there are also a lot of assumptions that the groups may have been differing on that were significant.
One of the things that I'm sitting here listening to all this research and everything, growing up, we didn't have running water or anything like that. We had well water, but we also had spring water. We depended a lot on spring water. And I don't know whether any of you have run into spring water or what do y'all do with that? Do y'all tap into that or do you know or have you ever seen any spring water? How many have seen spring water? And it's water that, to me, it's so fresh and everything. When you drink it, you just keep drinking. After a while, you're sloshing around, it sounds like. But it's a good water, and I just wonder, because a lot of tribal members, living out in the country, they depended on spring water a lot, well water too, so I just wondered about that.
Did you consider that? Did anybody consider that?
We did surface water.
So we did not identify any natural springs on the property, however, our groundwater.
I'm sorry, I can't understand.
Nice and loud.
So we did not identify any natural springs on the property. However, we did use our designs based on using the groundwater from the Indian Mesa aquifer through our wells. So.
Additionally, when sampling all of the surface water, there were some concerns additionally with all of the hardness as well as fecal contaminants. So we did E. coli tests, which were positive for the surface water. There's also, for Turkey Creek, had even higher hardness ratings and salinity.
Yeah, so essentially on site, when we went on there, we didn't see any natural springs, but springs are essentially groundwater, so that's why we sampled the groundwater basically to identify the current quality of it and see how much water quantity we could pull from the groundwater, which I think our consensus was for the water park and the whole resort in general, we're going to utilize groundwater because it's in a sense it's more clean and it's easier to treat, or if not, probably don't need to treat anything, so it would be much cheaper just to use groundwater.
It's also important to note the scale of the resort, and that if we were to run into like some spring of water availability, that is awesome to try to contribute to the water demand. But because the water, there's so much water that's going to be used on it, that we're going to have to use groundwater as well to meet that.
My name is Shelley Chard, I'm the Water Quality Director at DEQ, so that's kind of my world, is the regulatory side, in addition to growing out in Pot County. So definitely feel a connection to this area. I was wondering about two different things, so I'll throw them both at you and y'all can decide how you want to divide and conquer. The first question that I have is related to the constructed wetlands. Did you think about or factor in the operation and maintenance and the clogging of those constructed wetlands and how that impacted your recommendations? And then my other question was related to with the reuse that's being contemplated, particularly of the hotel or the occupied dwellings. Did you consider PFAS and some of the emerging contaminants and how that came into play?
So for the emerging contaminants, we didn't have the sufficient lab equipment to test for PFAS, and those can be also pricey, so we didn't necessarily go into that, but we did choose to test for the most common that would be, referencing for drinking water and stuff like that. So the most common test is what we ran.
And also like to point out that for the gray water reuse systems, none of that water will be, for gray water reuse systems, none of the water is drinking water. It is all used for fixtures such as sinks and showers, so there will be no direct consumption of that water.
It won't be in the sink or shower water, it'll be water that is not contacting people.
Steve has a question.
First of all, bravo, I'm blown away, congratulations. We're in good hands with you guys, great, I mean, wow, great job. Especially, I appreciate the police including cost, because when you're in the real world, that's gonna be one of the first things you're asked is, how much is this gonna cost me? And good job there, excellent. And then the second thing is going to be, are you willing to guarantee your work? All right, so I wanna know from you guys, are you willing to bet your car that your plan is going to work?
So, once we're salaried, we'll get back to you. Definitely will guarantee my work once we get paid for this. But
You should give us the fundamentals of engineering exam.
Yeah, Steve, I'm sure you were probably very envious of those estimates for the water wastewater treatment plant of 12 to 28 million. You were saying, give me some of that. Right? Anyway, that's been really great. So let's give all these kids a super hand. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jessica and I'm here with the landscape architecture graduate students. We are first year students and this has been a semester long project. As landscape architects, we build places. Architects build inside of buildings and the buildings themselves, and we build the spaces around them. Think the Gathering Place, or places like Scissortail or the High Line, these places that give you a very unique sense of place. We involve communities and help shape their vision into places that serve not only people, but the environments and ecosystems that surround them. We aim to improve quality of life and environmental resilience with our designs. Before we begin, this is a title of my group's project, but before we begin, we want to thank you all for being here and for allowing us the opportunity to take part in this dream. My fellow classmates and I have worked all semester to put together these designs, which we hope you will find inspiring. Since January, we have been learning about the site's history, working with OU leaders in ethical tribal engagement, met with Jake Tiger, and saw for ourselves the beautiful culture and legacy that the Seminole Nation is proud to reflect. KC has conveyed his vision for this place, a resort that is multifaceted, a leader in sustainability, entertainment, community, and cultural prosperity. My team and I visited the site 3 times over the past semester and got a deeper understanding and appreciation for the natural surroundings, as well as challenges and potential limitations, namely natural water sourcing, old oil wells, and saline soils. We studied the natural systems as well as the human systems that are intricately woven into the site's history and current situation. In speaking with the environmental engineers, we more fully understand the need for a one water solution, reclaiming every drop of water that falls for reuse on the site. In addition to lack of water, as we know, heat is another threat, as is wind. However, our designs have considered these impacts and offer innovative solutions. One of our challenges as a group was a lack of community feedback. Our designs are meant to serve as a starting point for the discussion, but we in no way feel comfortable designing for our community without their input. We worked as groups on this project, and we could continue working on these for ages. It was really exciting. But because the semester offers limited working hours, we present to you our designs tonight. Each group will speak for about 10 minutes. There's 6 groups, so that will take us about an hour. But this is the fun part. Afterwards, we'll take questions and commentary, and we really encourage this part because it makes us better designers to hear your feedback, and we've been waiting so long for feedback on these designs. Again, we want to thank you. We're honored and humbled to be involved with this tremendously influential project. I speak for all of us in expressing our gratitude and hope that these designs leave you inspired and open to limitless possibilities. With that, we'll start with our group. I'm Jessica, and
I'm Elena. Hello.
I'm Nana.
Our project is called Vast Horizons, Fostering Prosperous Connections in Seminole. Our vision aims to create a place that connects community interests with opportunities for economic and social prosperity. By establishing resilient ecological corridors, our design prioritizes the preservation of critical natural resources and habitats. Over 12 miles of trails will serve visitors and nearby residents, offering opportunities for recreation and chances to connect with nature. The light rail will facilitate effortless movement across the large site, increasing access for all. Amenities such as the athletic center, community farm, and cultural complex will become cherished assets, offering a myriad of educational experiences for users. Considering the site and the surrounding community, our design will serve as a testament to sustainable development and environmental resilience while improving quality of life in the region. Some of our design goals are listed here. We want to focus on nature-inspired design, ecological preservation, and wildlife circulation and conservation, as well as community engagement and involvement, multimodal transit and connection opportunities throughout the site, connecting outside the site as well, and sustainability and resilience with mixed use and adaptable sites and projects within. And finally, cultural preservation and education.
So this is our master plan, and just for the sake of time, we can't go over everything that's on here, but we've chosen a few of the key elements we think are most important to the site. And so the first being a community farm. So we wanted to include an urban farm, and this will target the food desert issues in the region, as well as connecting residents to the mission of the resort, giving them a stake in the project, and also increasing stewardship and impacts. Another important aspect of our design was our wildlife crossing. So our design prioritizes decreasing habitat fragmentation and preserving wildlife connections. And so we've included 3 different wildlife crossings on our site. You can see the 3 different areas. And we've included a perspective rendering of what one of these crossings would look like. And so with the installment of several safe wildlife crossing corridors, we are able to decrease wildlife harm up to 90%. And so to ensure access of the site through different types of experiences, we've included a variety of different trails. And so as mentioned before, our site includes 12 miles of trails, which will serve visitors of the site and community residents. There are walking and biking trails. We've included equestrian trails and a light rail line. And so the installation of a light rail allows users ease of access to the many amenities provided in the project and throughout such a large site with a whole new experience. And so we think it's important because by connecting people to nature, this resort will serve to cultivate attitudes of stewardship and belonging, and again, emphasize really being engaged in the site. And so a bit about the entrance of our site. So currently there's a casino in this area in the top right corner, and so we want to keep that as it is Seminole-owned land. And so we thought about having that casino, also including a casino and then a youth arcade. And so most of the commercial development in our master plan is included in this area, but we also thought it was important to include to highlight the wetlands we've included. And so this is a critical habitat that supports a variety of species in a healthy hydrological system. And so we thought that just incorporating this by the commercial area would be really important. And so we're not designing the buildings, but we thought it would be good to incorporate a section elevation drawing of what this sort of layout would look like. And so we have an example of like one of the hotels being here, a shopping center, and then a restaurant area. But we've also included renderings of what our wetlands would look like.
Part of what makes Oklahoma great is the great people who live here and interact with one another, and that to me is what will make this project successful. So we wanted to use intentional strategies in our design to invest in the communities here and the people here and make this a destination for everyone to want to visit. We do that through biomimicry, phyto and microremediation, which is a strategy using plants and mushrooms to clean up the environment, absorbing carbon, absorbing heavy metals, and some of the constituents that the engineering students mentioned in their slides as well as rainwater and stormwater capture methods, recycled and locally sourced materials, recycling and composting throughout the site, dark sky approved lighting, which decreases light pollution and would showcase our really beautiful night skies here in Oklahoma. Because we have such vast views and big open skies, I think that's a really great asset here in our state. As well as subterranean and rooftop parking opportunities, just using all of the space that we have to its full potential. Using what's underground and on top of the building as well. And then having a plastic-free site. So through our design goals, we hope to achieve these outcomes, which will highlight and showcase Oklahoma's natural beauty and uniqueness and regenerate keystone species here in our state, which improve ecosystems throughout. Also provide a sense of place for people to connect with nature, each other, and the patchwork of Oklahoma culture. Oklahoma is actually really diverse in our people, in our plants, and in our wildlife. We're one of the most diverse states in the United States because we have many different ecosystems. And it's important to understand how those function and how to protect those. We also wish to enhance the region by becoming an asset within the community, uplifting the well-being and the economy, which is a bonus, and exemplify innovative design practices with environmental justice at the forefront, meaning we want to create spaces where everyone feels welcome and that everyone will have a good experience here. And we want to foster prosperous connections, going back to our title. We want people to feel a sense of community and a sense of place here and feel like they belong.
On that note, we are interested in community feedback. We encourage your feedback after everyone presents. We hope that you come with questions, and we hope that you take these designs and run with them and really create a space that's prosperous and well-loved. It will become an asset of the community, and we have a very unique opportunity to do that here. Thank you.
My name is Grace Sanders Wiggins, and this is Noah Anderson. Our design we've named Interwoven, a living network of land and learning. So for our vision statement and our design goals, essentially our top priorities are going to be preservation and remediation, sustainable practices, energy and conservation, educational opportunities about the Seminole culture and the ecological systems in place and ways to mitigate climate change and that sort of impact. And then obviously connecting people through the site and to the site.
And before we get into our master plan, I wanted to talk a little bit about our development process. The site is really large and there's a lot of things in the program that need to be organized. We started with what's depicted on the left, bubble diagrams, and this really just helps organize the elements.
You announced it pretty well, but I think the microphone will still be good.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
And on the left is our bubble diagrams, and those help us organize the elements that are in the program. The site is over 2 acres long, so there's like a lot of area, or not 2 acres, 2 miles, I'm sorry. So there's a lot of area for development, and Casey did want a lot of things implemented onto the site. So this helps us just organize how those things would interact with each other. And then next is our spatial bubbles, and this gives us a real good idea of how we would want to lay out all of those elements and how they interact with each other and the connections we might have to make in between them. And then in the bottom right corner is a conceptual plan, and it's really just a fleshed out design idea that has fleshed out connections and with all the trails and things and how people would maneuver through the site. This is our master plan, and what really drove our design for the master plan was the idea of wanting to maintain this corridor of nature throughout the entire site for wildlife to go through. Here on the top left corner down to the bottom right corner is a stretch of just nature, and this helped us delineate the nature area from our gray infrastructure, which is the commercial development, and that's found in the top right corner. So this will help maintain the natural aesthetic that we wanted to focus on. And starting on the top right, we have the entrance to our site, and we imagine this being like a tree tunnel, creating that emotional transition into the site that kind of fosters the aesthetics that we want. And there's our kind of central hub of development. We kept this all close because we wanted it to be pretty walkable. This site's very large. So we implemented a lot of walking trails throughout. And on the master plan, you'll see these orange axes and these down the horizontal axis right here. And the vertical axis right here. And we imagine this being vehicular traffic and maybe golf carts, transporting people throughout the site, and all of the purplish pink trails are walking trails, and those are found throughout the entire site. We wanted this to be very walkable and for people to really get that sense of nature and the escape, but still serving both. Here is a section of an area in our master plan. We have a lagoon right before our water treatment area, and we imagine this helping treat water naturally before the water treatment with the use of plants. We imagine these being retention ponds with an underdrain in between the two with a dam going over for people to walk over. And that when this pond on the right fills up, it would feed into this one on the other side. You would have to implement a bridge if we did do this, but there's minimal land work involved.
So this is a perspective of what it would look like if you were to walk along some of the trail in the southwest corner of the site. On your left, you see a row of trees, and that's sort of kind of between the kind of private cabin area, and then on the right you've got the bison preserve. And kind of in the background you can see that's one of the condos, and next to that is a restaurant that overlooks the bison preserve. And then this is a perspective that shows what it might look like inside the outdoor mall. This is, we're not architects, and so we're not saying that the building should look like this, but it's just kind of an idea, it's just showing how we wanted to connect it, nature and shopping, and how we wanted to kind of keep it open and still bring in as much nature as we could, make it for a little bit of shade for the hot summer days, and I think, that's it.
Okay, good evening, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren, and this is Cooper. I thought I was talking with
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, so our project is called Spirit of the Prairie, and so I'll start off with our vision statement, which, so the vision of the Spirit of the Prairie is to create a transformative and dynamic resort destination that honors the land, culture, and spirit of the Oklahoma prairie. Guests of the resort will experience the unique beauty of vast, open prairie lands, the majesty of roaming bison, a multitude of activities among nature, art, and culture. This plan weaves together sustainable development and design, native planting, habitat preservation and restoration, art and cultural education experiences that foster connection to land and stewardship for future generations to come. Much of this land has been held by families for generations, where farming and agriculture have been a way of life for over a century. So these lands hold deep significance for the many individuals and families, both indigenous and non-indigenous communities, who are connected to these lands, and all the living things that have existed here since time immemorial. As aspiring landscape architects, we acknowledge the importance of all these and are committed to stewardship of the land as the foundation of all we seek to achieve.
I'm Cooper, like Lauren said, and so along with the vision statement, we started with our design goals at the beginning of the process, just kind of, yeah. So along with the vision statement, we started with our design goals before we started the design process, just kind of coming together and thinking about what we really wanted to achieve through our design. Due to the size of the site, and like we've heard tonight from the group before us, the resources are definitely of utmost importance. We are both really passionate about the land here, and we're situated in the EPA's Cross Timbers ecoregion, where mixed prairie grasslands meet post oak and blackjack oak forests. And we really wanted to preserve as much of the existing vegetation as we could, and restore any of it that may have been lost. We also wanted to create a design that fostered education and connection to the prairie, and a design that's organized in a way that flows intentionally and makes sense moving throughout the site. So, and this is kind of a visualization of our design process. Beginning in the top left, we have bubble diagrams where we kind of clustered programs we were given by MLR to put together, and seeing how they sort of relate to each other, breaking those down further, eventually getting into a spatial organization of where it might make sense to put them throughout the site, eventually where we developed pathways and how things might flow back and forth or along through the site. finally coming to our concept plan in the bottom right, which is the most fleshed out that it's gotten at this point in the design process.
Which brings us to our master plan that we have created. So before we get into the actual plan, just a few things we wanted to share. So overall, we have separated the site into two kind of general areas, with the northernmost portion being the development zone, and then the southernmost portion the kind of nature and natural area. So the site runs along, or I'm so sorry, the northernmost portion of the site has 3 miles of I-40 frontage road, and that was identified early on as an important asset for attracting people to this resort. So the development zone portion of the site was strategically placed there, and after a lot of analysis and research, we determined that the southernmost portion of the site was ideal for keeping it as natural as possible. And so overall, we really have, after several site tours, have tried to let the land be our guide. And throughout this design process, it was really important for us not to harm the existing ecosystems and wildlife. So we worked really hard to try and preserve and maintain a lot of these wooded areas within the site. So this master plan really offers a lot of different kinds of experiences and has something for everyone. So we've kind of organized this in a way that is based on user experience in these different little clusters. So we'll start on the left side of our plan and just kind of work from left to right and top to bottom. So on the left, we have our one of several entrances. This entrance is to the golf course in the 5-star hotel. And we have also put the clubhouse and luxury condos. We also situated our one of 2 water towers. After we had met with Dr. Knox and the engineering students, it was determined that the best place for a water tower would have been in this general area because it's the highest elevation. And Cooper will take us into our section.
So moving along from left to right, kind of move past the golf course into the zone of more development, and this is kind of an area that, like Lauren said, runs along I-40. Prime real estate, as they say, and so we situated a retail shopping center along there, so you could see, what's going on, but also hoping that local entrepreneurs and businesses could be established there and engaged with the community. We clustered just a lot of the development there, hoping to utilize green infrastructure, and moving further to the east, we
So directly in the middle here, this is really, I think, what we would call our main entrance that leads to this roundabout that we thought was a really great way, or opportunity rather, to showcase some art. And also with the roundabout, it just helps to move traffic around in a nice way and avoid congestion. So on the right side here, we have situated our 3-star hotel and a family arcade, as well as water park and wave pool. And so we did this kind of thinking about, with the users in mind. This is kind of the more family-oriented activities. And then just directly below that, we placed the arena, and we made use of a lot of parking garages to help with stormwater runoff. But with the arena, we wanted to go ahead and put a parking lot because we wanted to think about people, if there are rodeo events here or things like that, we want people to be able to come in and park with ease. So we also added an additional, that's numbered right here by the 24, a dedicated entrance for those people so that they can easily get in and out and not have to go through the golf course or something like that. Let's see. And then the next area is the bottom left corner, and this is where we have placed our bison refuge area. And it made the most sense. This was an open area already, but also had a lot of really great natural elements that could also be enhanced and restored. We have added a couple additional ponds here for those bison. We also added bison observation decks because naturally people are going to want to see an amazing herd of bison like this. So this was a way that was safe and would also allow people to go up a series of steps and look out over the bison refuge. And there is also a hiking trail around that. And then our last area.
Right, and so the hiking trail that leads around there continues further east into more multi-use trails that when designing, we looked at the natural contours of the land and designed those within the topography in a way that would make sense, but also to highlight a lot of the key features, the existing very large pond in the southeast corner that would be proposed as a wetland, and the wooded areas, the woodlands, and let's see. Right.
Okay, so this image is a perspective of what we had imagined that grand entrance would look like, and making this an opportunity to showcase Seminole art. And on one of our site visits, we got to climb on top of a decommissioned oil rig, and it was at a high point, and we looked out over the land, and I thought about the statue, the Guardian looking down, over the side. So.
And then one more digital rendering that we came up with was what the proposed trailhead might look like. That would make sense to kind of restore with a lot of those keystone species like the post oaks and blackjack oaks, and with the seating, designed in throughout, along the trail where it made sense, and then the last rendering we have is of the section cut of the bison refuge, that just transition zone. But thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Adrian. And I'm Austin. And today we'll be presenting From Prairie to Place. This is connecting land through culture, connecting land, culture, and people through design. So this is our table of context, kind of just highlights what our presentation entails. So we have a vision statement, the design process, master plan, perspective, and we'll wrap it up with a section elevation. So this semester we had the privilege to visit the site on 3 occasions, and we're able to conduct studies on areas of the area's natural and human system, as well as its culture. With these studies, me and my partner came up with a master plan that aims to re-image this land as an inclusive resort where nature, culture, and community thrive together. The resort will offer diverse opportunities for recreation, entertainment, and education, while thoughtfully integrating the open prairie landscape that defines the region. The design tends to unite both development and natural zones while centering on sustainable and human-focused design principles that create meaningful connections between people and place. Deeply rooted in Seminole culture, the resort will highlight their culture through immersive experiences, including historical museums, art, and architecture that reflect the tradition and stories of this culture. Ultimately, this resort aspires more than a destination. It will serve as a shared space that affirms identity, renews our connection to the land, and places community at the heart of every experience.
For our design goals, we wanted to focus on wildlife and habitat preservation, Seminole history with the Cultural Museum, and using landmarkers using Seminole art and architecture to ground the resort as a place that's deeply rooted in Seminole history. Natural advantages using site forests and minimizing impact on existing areas and sustainable practices. For our design process, we began with making bubble diagrams that you can see here, and we separated them into 5 categories: nature, entertainment, hospitality, recreation, and infrastructure. After figuring out what kind of like categories are the program elements should be in, we moved to concept planning, which just like they said earlier, spatializes all the things that we want to be in our site. And something that we chose to do for ours is make a central kind of just like developed commercial zone, because we want to minimize great infrastructure and create more like natural spaces and minimize disturbance for all the animals and stuff, animals that are already there. So this is one of the main focuses of our project, trying to figure out connections and making everything cohesive, not just like within the developed area, but also throughout the site. Through this, we made our final schematic plan that takes us into our master plan. This is our master plan, and you can see the main developed area that's right here. And to connect it to the rest of the site, we decided to add 2 like light rail routes. That the first one goes kind of east to west, taking you to the golf course and Prairie Trail, and the second one takes you north to south, taking you to more of the natural areas and more preserved lands on our site. To begin our tour of the master plan, we enter from, the main entrance would be from here, the lower entrance right here, and it would take you to the museum. And there would also be a second entrance that's higher up that goes to the casino and the movie studio and the gas station. Moving to the main developed area, these are the malls that we propose to do. They kind of follow organic shape to just break up the mundaneness of just having everything in square. It also kind of blocks some of the winds that come from the southeast. The mall has 2 main buildings, and with a courtyard in the middle. There will be 3 hotels, one here, and here, that kind of, it's easy to connect people from the road to the hotels. And then on the west side, there would be the family entertainment and a conference center for people to use with a large parking lot right there. At the north, since the floodplain takes you north, we decided to put a rain garden here with a retention pond to hopefully collect a lot of that water and not just let it run off into the highway. And adding a food garden here just for the restaurants that they could use, or just for the community. And then a sports area down here, kind of in the middle of everything, so it's easily accessible for people.
Perfect. Moving on to the golf course and prairie trails. So starting in the northwest corner, we've added an entrance. And so this entrance, as you make your way, you'll be greeted by a gas station, which is represented by the letter Q. As you continue down, the road will continue across the 200-acre in condos, represented as the letters P, that we have placed for easy access in the open prairie land. The road eventually reconnects to the existing road. The clubhouse has been placed in the midpoint, creating a natural stop in the golf course. The club golf course is represented by the letter O. And then also this area, as the high points, we've added a prairie lookout for visitors to experience and observe the landscape. And if one wants to fully immerse with the prairie, there's grassland trails connecting to the Bison Ridge Trail. And as my partner mentioned, there's the train that will allow individuals to these points. Moving on to our nature preserved area. So starting with the letter U, that's following from north to south, will give you the access to the rodeo arena, the luxury cabins, and the RV parking. This road will be alongside the bison fence line, so visitors can observe the bison in a safe and controlled way. There will be an additional train on this part of the resort. The site of transportation will go around nature preserve, allowing experiences in different habitats, such as woodlands, prairie, and the water. And then we have our water center represented by the letter W. That will be a hill for recreation and relaxation, offering activities such as hiking, canoeing, and rowing. Then in the corner, we have our wetland lagoons and wastewater management, where water will be treated and used in the resort or put in Turkey Creek. And then throughout our side over here, we have different trails that follow the contour lines of the topography of the resort.
This is a perspective of what the courtyard of the mall would look like. So there would be shade sails that cover just to add shade for people so it's not too hot. And then like garden beds in the middle to break up just concrete and add more green color to everything. And this is a view of what the commercial area would look like. There's a big pond at the bottom. That's the pond right here. So there would just be a bunch of trees, and it kind of shows you what like the mall would be here, and this would be the hotel.
And then we'll wrap up with the section elevation. So this is a demonstration of the luxury cabins that are located in the south area of the resort. So we have the far left, we have a built-in pond to water the bison, and then we have two different cabins represented in there. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, we are Jenny, and this is Aniele, and our presentation is called Blazing Prairies. It's our vision for ecological harmony and sustainable resort design. Starting off with our vision statement, as our title kind of alludes to, we're seeking harmony and aiming to honor the vibrant heritage of the Seminole Nation, while also celebrating the resilient nature of Oklahoma's native prairie ecosystems. So we really want to just celebrate the culture as well as the native landscape and educate visitors on Seminole's rich art, history, and architecture as it relates to the land today. As Oklahoma's already pretty extreme weather patterns, are heightened by climate change. It is critical to harness our natural renewable resources such as solar, wind, and our water resources to stabilize the impact of such a big development. Our plan utilizes microclimate design elements such as trees for shade and wind mitigation, solar panel covers for parking, shades, and as well as path shades, and rain gardens for beauty and for stormwater management. And our ultimate goal is to create harmonious interactions between human and wildlife through measures such as wildlife bridges and restoration of native and pollinator flora. Yeah, you can go on.
And so you've heard this a lot. We all start out with bubble diagrams. That's the basics of any sort of sketch, any sort of sketch. Again, we just group everything, sort of group them by high, middle, and low energies. Things of like, think about going to a casino can be seen as a high energy level thing. Going on a stroll is seen as a low energy level. And so from there on, you kind of just want to think about how you're spatially going to integrate these sort of spaces and these sort of programs, which was in collaboration with the Maple Leaf Resort that helped us envision about what sort of things they wanted to foresee in the resort in itself. And so again, this also follows along their guidelines of having sort of this entertainment for family friendly, and then also just focused of intimate spaces and more public spaces and spaces to preserve the nature and bison refuge. And then moving on, that helps us to demonstrate into the concept plan these sort of, again, zones that we had, sort of that commercial zone, the nature preserving of the woodlands and the prairies, and then also how we think about transportation-wise going throughout the site, along with perhaps how we can engage the community in itself within this pathway. And so after we do that, we do tons and tons and tons of rewriting our concept plans, talking through. If we didn't mention it before, we did lots of site visits. We did talk to actually the engineering students at one point. They came in and we talked about hydrology. We sort of talked about the topographic maps and how it worked with our site. You know, we kind of gave them our plans and ideas, and then from there on, it was like, oh, is this a good idea? Is this how? Is this beneficial for our land? Is it going to help the ecosystem? And so on.
Okay, here's some of our inspiration for our design. When we were in the concept design process and thinking about programs that were already included, we thought about additional programs that we could fit in, including the Bison View Bridge. So when we were thinking about the challenges and opportunities that comes with adding a herd of bison, restoring them to the native landscape to which they used to belong, we also think about human challenges, making sure that safety is a primary concern. So allowing a raised walkway to go a little bit into the bison preserve allows people to get this like exhilarating experience while also maintaining a necessary degree of separation from the bison. In this, we could also include like a canopy walkway among the trees to give people a different perspective than they normally would get just walking on a normal trail. We were also inspired by the concept of wildlife bridges to help protect the wildlife and give them more of a connection through the spaces instead of fragmented habitats. We were thinking a lot about connectivity and transportation. Since this site is going to be such a large attraction, we had to think about traffic congestion and ways to decrease that. And we thought about adding electric shuttle buses to help facilitate people throughout the whole site without having a bunch of huge parking lots everywhere and just everyone driving their cars. But the parking lots that we do have, we thought about having parking garages or smaller spots with solar panels that can help shade the parking spots as well as make it more efficient space-wise.
So this leads on into our master plan. Again, we're just going to say that the site, again, is near the I-40 corridor. Let's see if this thing works. Perfect. So we'll start here on this corner here. We have the casino, we have a 5-star hotel, we're trying to bring in people in. This is right before you get into this sort of commercial zone where we're gonna have those family-friendly entertainment amenities. You have sort of that water park here. You've got this big luxury brand outlet mall here. You've got a convention center, a food court, and then even more hotels to help accommodate those extra people coming in and influx. And then this, of course, we'll talk about this entrance here that sort of wraps around back into that same sort of zoning. But here is number 5. You can see right here we have a land bridge, and that's what Jenny had previously just talked about in the slide beforehand. This sort of helps to stop some of that fragmentation that inevitably will happen. Excuse me. And so this is a great example. The Gathering Place also has these sort of land bridges, and they've been proven to be a success. And I think we need to incorporate that more among designing spaces in the future. And then we'll move over to this sort of middle. We have this sort of Greg Norman inspired golf course. Of course, we can't really design that, but we kind of have this sort of space that we have here for that. And then we have the condos just being within that space. On the opposite side, we have this multi-purpose arena that we hope will attract big events, rodeos, and things like that. And then I'll move it on to Jenny to talk about the south portion of the master plan.
Okay, so do you just click this one? Yep. All right, in the southern portion of our master plan, we have this great big pond that is already established there that we can use for different kinds of recreation. Will be trails that span all along around the pond, and they also reach up over that land bridge to connect people to the more commercial zone if they would like to go there. But the heart of this zone down here in the southern portion is this cultural center right here. It's connected to the Bison View Bridge right here. And that is bridging between the trail system and the open prairie preserve. And then, down here at the very bottom, that is going to be where the cabins and the RVs can set up. And down there's a good tree cover. We wanted to build around the tree cover and just be conscious of that. And in this very southeastern corner, there's going to be a community farm, and that also has trails that connect around that lake so people can wander down there, maybe take advantage of some agritourism, as well as provide food for the community.
And then we're just going to do a little quick overview of this part here. We have the movie studios. I know it's becoming, we have a big film industry. Casey talked about it at the very beginning. So of course that was just kind of a no-brainer to incorporate into our program. We also have these nature trails, but I'm going to quickly bypass over that because we'll talk about it more in just a second. But we also have, just like the opposite end, we're mimicking the same sort of feel. We have a gas station and then with a casino in there, and sort of utilizing this empty space that was once a rest stop and is sort of just a mediocre, now it's maybe a rest stop, maybe it's not. And so it's really just trying to reuse what we do have and try to make a potential opportunity in that. So we have the equestrian trails. These trails span from, again, a quick stroll to a few mile loops, giving this any access to accommodate any range and number of people here. We also have these horse trails, which is Jenny's favorite part, so I guess I'll leave that to Jenny to talk about.
All right, so here's a perspective of the equestrian trail, and it's also a pedestrian trail. So this is what it could look like. This is the pond that is on this site. I thought it could be a great place for people to maybe have canoes or kayaks, just get into the water. We know that the creek is an important thing for the Seminole Nation, so we wanted to restore some of the native wetland plants. Here's some reeds here, like you could do river cane or like horsetail reed, or there's some sand plums down here, just native plants. And then we could have educational plaques for people to read about the culture and history, as well as some of the native ecosystem. We learned about chickees when we went to visit the museum, and we were really inspired by these like open air structures, and they could be rest stops, or they could just be places for people to sit and observe nature and just feel more at home in the environment.
Okay, lastly, we have the Bison Reserve. It's a major thing that's sort of being integrated into our program, and we're wondering why bison, why integrate them back? Well, they're part of, historically they're just part of Oklahoma in general, and there's been many successes in bringing back and restoring that area. They help to restore an ecological balance in the ecosystem. They support indigenous cultures, and we can provide a safe opportunity to learn and interact with them, and as we have done here through maybe up here and the way that we can begin to learn about these creatures and not just see them as a boundary between they're one thing and we're one thing as well, just sort of creating that harmonious balance between both of them and interacting with them. But here we have this cultural center here, which would lead out into a pier that would overlook the buffalo bison. And we have this sort of water, a man-made pond that we have here to sort of get the bison to come over, because, I mean, they're natural creatures, they're gonna wanna roam all over, so this would be a one way to bring them over and kind of have that subtle interaction between the both of them. So again, this is just kind of an overview of the thing here that I have. Glass guardrail, got bison pond, and then the restored prairie. Just another view from that point on. You've got the tree canopy line because you'd be above and overlooking down on their sites. So it gives them that privacy, but also respect in both boundaries. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Alicia and
my name is Shaboni.
And we're going to talk about our design here, which we have titled Traversing the Prairie, a Sustainable and Captivating Resort in Seminole County. So I'm sure you all are very familiar with the location that we're currently at. We're kind of here, but this site is north of where we are, along I-40. So another part of the design process that we use is a SWOT analysis. I'm just going to summarize this. Some of the major strengths that we liked from this site is that it has a very flat topography and kind of untouched natural environment. It's right along I-40, so a lot of visible space for development. And then some weaknesses, there could be the clean water access, which hopefully the environmental engineers will be helping with. And then there's a lot of open space, which, as we know, in the summer can be very hot, and if we're gonna have a lot of guests over in this area, we wanna have them protected. So opportunities, we wanna preserve all this natural landscape as much as possible and utilize clean energy in our design. So threats, obviously all this big development, we're worried about how that might change the landscape and if further development could occur. So all of these factors went into what we wanted to capture in our design principles. So we kind of borrowed from our title here. We have traverse, sustain, and captivate. So our main goals for traverse are to really connect the site with nature and trails, kind of highlight a unique golf course and sports fields, and then have indoor and outdoor recreational activities. So for sustain, we're going to enhance that native ecology and wildlife of the site, model sustainable practices, and then include cultural and ecological education opportunities. For captivate, we want to have distinct zones of experiences for guests, because there will be a lot going on.
We want to include activities for all ages and then make a landmark destination for a variety of events. Overall, traversing the prairie blends entertainment, recreation, and native landscapes into an attractive and inclusive resort for the region with those distinct zones of experiences for guests. So with all of that, we have our master plan, and you can see that we've kind of divided all of these locations into those different kind of categories. Of course, they can overlap, but it's easy to just kind of keep them separate for visuals. So we have our traverse section, we have our sustain section, captivate, and then your basic hospitality and services. Kind of with this overview look, we want to highlight that we really embraced having a really unique and flowing movement through the site with our roads, and all of this will be connected by a variety of trails used for recreation. And then a lot of our heavy development will be along I-40, where it's easily visible, and we kind of keep the south part of the site as natural as possible. So now, for kind of more of the detailed look at each section, I'm gonna let Sorboni take over.
Hi, I'm Sorboni, and I'm gonna talk about the purse we have designed together for this project. So we have designed the main entrance from the west side, and we will be seeing community park and conservatory while entering through this. We wanted to create distinct experience for the visitors, like while they entering through the site. And there is the branded outlet mall here. We have the Sunset Hotel and the Sunset Trail here. You can see the perspective from here. Here's a community park, and that's the parking garage for this community park, and that's the branded outlet mall. We have designed restaurants for the branded outlet mall also, and that's the Sunset Hotel. This part is an entertainment and events part. Like how Casey stated that he wanted a water park for the phase 2, but like we really wanted to design this. So there's the wave pool here, and also there's a water park with the restaurant here. We have the family model here, which like they can see the water park from there. We have the arcade, and we have designed like separate parking for like the arcade zone and the hotel zone. We have designed also like a tramline there, which will be connected from the west side to the east side. And here we have the arena and the convention center and the Seminole Museum in this part. We also have a blackjack hill, which is like 100 feet height from the ground. Do you want to add something to that, like blackjack hill?
Yeah, this is just a small note, because of the flat topography, I wanted to really include something that kind of stood out. And so this 100-foot tall blackjack hill will be a forested area. It will have hiking trails and a gazebo. It's the only major change of topography that we have on the site, and I just thought it'd make it really unique.
There's a view from the hotel and the hiking trails. This part here, we have the golf course, the condos, and sports fields and bison refuge. For this golf course, we have got an idea, like we wanted this to be a wetland golf course, which we got the idea from our friend from engineering department. We have the luxury condos here, and also the bison refuge here. There's the athletic camp and the sports field in here. There's a part which will have the nature preserve and the West Equestrian Trail. For this part here, we have the gateway cabins, movie studio, and the casino. So the casino is on the Seminole land, and the movie studio is like right beside that. We designed the gateway canyons, and we have designed more vegetation around there because we wanted those forests to keep inside there. This is a view for the gateway canyons and our trails. This is the part for the East Equestrian Trails, RV Park, and the Nature Preserve. We have the service spot here, and we were thinking about adding hiking trails in that. Those are the other parcels which we have, like the employee housing and the water treatment plant here and the electric plant, and that part is for the solar farm. Here we can see the Blackjack Hill facing south section.
Okay, so here's just another overview of everything with our master plan and our design principles, but that is all that we have for our design. Now it's time for that community feedback. Thank you again for your time. We're gonna ask you for a little bit more, and feel free to give us any questions or comments about anything that you saw or heard from all of my cohorts today. Yes, thank you again.
I especially appreciate your efforts to learn about our culture and learn about who we are before you ever started your program. So I appreciate that. Because at the heart of this project, the heart of all of this is our culture, our identity, and our history as Seminole people. So I really appreciate that. And I think one of you had mentioned earlier that you were asking yourself all of these different questions. I think the lady here in the brown. And one of the things that I would encourage you to keep asking, especially when you're working with a tribal project, is, you know, for this one, a good question to consider at every step is, how does this honor the Seminole people? How does this honor their culture? And how does it protect their next 7 generations coming up? Because that's what we're all here for, right? You're the ideation, and we're the ideation of 7 generations ago. So how do we work hard to protect the 7 generations from now? So that might be a question to kind of keep asking yourself, is how do we do that? I really like the slide that showed the natural plants and then things that are important to Seminole culture. Red cedar, I don't care what anybody tells you how bad it is, it's not. It's very important to our culture. Juniper and those things that's been embedded in our Muskogean culture from when we were back east. So it has a lot of healing properties, it's very important to us. So I would love to see cedar and more juniper in your designs. Yopon is very important to us as well. I love the idea of the black hill and the cedar. You have that one, this group over here, you guys. The blackjack and the cedar area is, again, something that I think would be really something that honors our culture. The last one I have is noise from I-40. So I was a guest at the Okana about a month ago, and you go out into the balcony and you are assaulted by the noise from I-40. So is there anything that you could do to minimize any of that noise from I-40?
Some really fun techniques that you can use are water. They have a lot of nature-based designs in Singapore that do just that. They use a lot of falling water to kind of mask that traffic sound, and it becomes a more fulfilling sensation, and it does help to create a unique sense of place that people come to enjoy. So you might consider that.
Echo what Dana said as well. And I really did like the way yours incorporated the cultural aspects, is what the walking trails, the statues, and how you had the natural trees that were still there. I don't agree with Dana. I think that cedars are great, but I think that they're taking over Seminole County, and I don't like it. Yeah, right now they're not maintained. So there's like areas where but cedars are great, like, but you know, everything is in moderation. I mean, cake is great too, but I don't want to eat it every day. But no, I do love the smell of cedars and the way that they smell when the wind blows through them. And I think when I think back as being a kid and growing up and in the Seminole culture, I think of that smell of the cedars coming through a lot of times. But that's one of the things that I really like is the way you guys, several of you have embraced our culture and you do it in the design, because when we bring people here, we want them to experience not only the fun and the shopping and the movie theaters and the casino, but we want them to know who we are as people, as Seminole people. And in our past, like Jake might have told you at the museum about where we came from in Florida and kind of incorporating that with who we are now and where we are today. And that's and I believe I saw several of you guys that did that, and I'm with them on the bridges. Those bridges are awesome, and I also like the I've seen a few of the elevated, but I also like the ones where you're walking down in the trees as well. So I like that kind of the way, I believe it was you guys that incorporated both of those aspects into your design. But you guys did great, and you said you were first years, I think is what you guys are. For first year students, I applaud you guys on what you guys have done and how you've taken so many aspects into one design.
I just wanted to point out that one of them said something about chiquis. The chiquis are Seminole Tribe of Florida housing. It was when I went there back in 1949, and that's all they had was chiquis. They didn't have homes like there were here. So I was so fascinated and everything. But here, arbors are built with our ceremonial ground. So I just want y'all to understand the difference between the two tribes. Our ancestors came from there and everything, but at the time, our culture that they have, the designs was not invented at that time. I think it came in like late 1930 or early 1930s. So I just want y'all to, know the difference, where it came from, how we got it. It was brought back by Seminole tribal members like myself, the missionaries, whatever. So there's a history between the patchwork that we have. It was like kind of transferred back to Oklahoma, but it didn't come with our ancestors. And I have pictures that shows there was no patchwork at that time. So thank you for presenting your plans and everything. It sounds great. Hopefully I'll be standing on one of the bridge and see buffalo, So thank you again.
So do we have any more questions in the house?
Once again, it was an honor to give you guys a tour of the museum. I told Casey afterwards, I gave him a call, and I've been giving tours of the museum for, I think since Obama was in office. So they call me in to do tours all the time, and I told them, I said, you guys are probably the best group I ever had, because you guys were very attentive and taking notes, very considerate. So, the kind of like what Mom was talking about, the 7 generations. I forgot who asked me at the end of the tour, how I felt about it, because my stance is it's very ecological, environmental sustainability. So I'm always willing to help out as long as it's not exploitative in a way, because we all know by definition capitalism is exploitative. So I'm really relieved that you guys are open to look for more environmental impacts that kind of ties it all in together, because I know a lot of our council and our sometimes administration might disagree, but Seminole Nation is not a business. It's our whole foundation goes back to the ceremonial fire. We didn't have no businesses back then. So that's what we're really trying to go back to. That term a lot of the older medicine men told me growing up was which means going back to the land. That was like our prophecy. We're trying to work towards that. So, by any means necessary, that's what we're trying to do today within the Seminole Nation. So, once again, thank you guys for all the consideration and research you guys have put into this. So, Madocha Cages.
Want everybody to get home safe and sound. Be careful on the road. because some people are traveling back to Oklahoma City and Norman. So really, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful event, and thank you especially to the students.
Thank you all.